Good day to you. I'm Dwayne Black. I'm a NASA certified instructor since October 2018, and I've been instructing at VIR several times a year since that time period. This is part 2 of a series to address how to run VIR, and this series is going to address the climbing S's through mid-corner or so to the corner exit at South Bend. Something I forgot to say when I recorded the main part of this video, though, concerning the climbing S's, is you need to do all of your getting scared at the bottom of the hill, not the top of the hill. So if you have to slow down at the bottom of the hill so that you can be thrust positive, accelerating all the way up the hill, then that's what you need to do. There will be a spot that I'll talk about. You may have to breathe the throttle a little bit at the top, but you don't want to be midway through the S's and lifting out of fear, okay? Slow down at the bottom, on the gas, accelerating all the way up. All right, let's get started. Right, there's several things to talk about here with the climbing S's. I mean, I do want to say this is the defining feature of the track for a lot of people. It's the reason we come to VIR. And I don't want to start this video off trying to scare you, but I will say most of the accidents you're going to see at VIR that happen at the climbing S's happen at the top of the hill, but they actually happened as a culmination of a series of mistakes that started about where the car is now at the bottom of the hill. There's a few theories on how to run this. There's actually a novice to an advanced way, and a way that depends on how willing are you mentally to commit to using those green and yellow curbs. And I also want to say that a light car versus a heavy car may have a slightly different approach, and I'll get into that momentarily. But I also want to say, as you're coming up to this point, really just before you get to this point, you'll be able to see better than this camera can. You really want to look ahead and trace a pattern up the hill to tell yourself where to go. And there's also a corner worker right here where the mouse is, and another one that's up at South Bend is kind of over top of them. And honestly, if they have a flag out, you can actually see the flag from here if you look for it. That's one of my challenges to you. So there's also a flag station on the left side of the track before here. It's just after that crossover bridge as we come. Now, I'm going to show you the heavy car way, and this is the way I would encourage you to start out with, as I feel it is safer. And as you come up on this, you want to stay right. Don't be tempted to connect the dots just yet, because the light car way is to make more of a beeline for this first left and that first right. The problem with that is, in a heavy car, it's going to want to make your car, after you go over that first right, push left and into the grass. The way you're going to avoid that is by staying right longer than you think you need to. I would start my right alongside this turn in for North Course. And then you're going to start your left-hand turn, going for a curb that's right here, but don't really get on the curb. There's not really a great need to touch it, in my opinion, unless maybe you're on that light car line that I was telling you about a moment ago. Hold left until you're about halfway from the curb to the hill. There's also a set of tires you can index off of, but about right there is where you're going to start your right-hand turn. Now, if you're in a heavy car, what that will do is get the car nice and settled and in a straight line up the hill. Now, pay attention to the compression. You're actually going downhill and then uphill. There's a nice little compression right there, and I've seen cars that can pull 1.1 to 1.3 Gs making that right-hand turn. And keep in mind, we're still gaining speed. I'm still wide open throttle, 113 miles per hour to start, 116 now. And now I'm still at 116. And now I'm starting to see that straight-ish line up the hill. So here's method one. This is the heavy commitment line. I'm going to put 2 tires on this curb every lap I can. 2 tires on this curb, and what this is going to do is, as sketchy as it may seem the first time you do it, it's going to allow you to keep that wheel straighter going up the hill. Cars like to go straight no matter how well they corner. They like going straight better. And so what it allows you to do is keep the wheel straight, and it's going to prevent you from having to do a right and a left and then another right that's going to keep upsetting in the balance of the car as you transition side to side. So I'm going to talk about method 2 now. I'm going to come back to method 1 in a moment. This is going to allow me to go straight over the curb. Pay attention to my trajectory. It looks like I'm going to the grass, but in a couple of slides you'll see I'm really not. I do have a little bit of a right in the car still, though, as you can tell by the G-force meter, but the wheel is coming straight as I go over that curb. Now, method 2, you may notice my trajectory is a little different. I'm pointing a little bit more to the right. I'm aimed more at that tree, or kind of between the villas and the tree in that area, Whereas in this video, my car is aimed a little bit more villa than it is. I mean, it's a very subtle difference, but a difference nonetheless. And if you're going to take this more cautious line, you're going to notice a few things. One is it's a lot slower. And part of that is because this was the very first time I ever came to VIR and did an HPDE. And you're going to backside the curbs. And so you're just going to touch the gray curb, maybe touch the green and yellow curb, and your trajectory is going more this way, and then you're going to make a slight left and come back in and kiss that curb again. Now, if I was on the green and yellow line, as I was a moment ago, you'll see trajectory is a little bit different. It's pointed a little bit more left still, and I'm aiming to keep the car straight-ish. Notice that the G-force meter is coming back to the center. And I'm going to make just an ever so slight left and kiss those green and yellow curbs, but that left is just very subtle compared to when on the other line, it's going to be a little bit more of a left-hand wheel in the car. Notice still going 116 miles per hour. Do work at that incrementally, please. Please don't stuff it into a tire or something because you saw that I had screenshots telling you that's how fast you need to be. So the straight line approach will have you almost naturally hit this curb without really trying. And somewhere along in here, you may or may not have to ease off the gas. It just depends on how much power you have and honestly what kind of tires you have. And another note on tires is I had an issue when I was on Michelin Pilot Super Sports that when I would hit that green and yellow curb, it would like throw the car harder to the left. And I still to this day don't know how much of that was tire based and how much of that was just the line I was using back then. But it seemed like when I put on RE71Rs with a Hankook RS4 at 200 tread wear tire, they loved going straight up the curb better. Notice that I'm just going to kind of touch and backside the curb again, though, if I'm not willing to use the FIA curb. And now we're going to have to finish up the S's by making this rather fast but smooth right-hand turn. This is another 1.1 G turn, honestly. So you're going to want to hold the gray curb but not necessarily get on top of it. And notice I'm actually accelerating. I've actually made it to 118 miles per hour by the top of the hill. And we want just enough gas that we don't want the car to come much over than it is here. If the car is ending up by the grass, then you were going too fast. You need to ease up as you come up the hill. And this is one of those situations where you don't just pop off the gas, you ease off the gas. And you may even momentarily ease back into the gas as you crest the hill. So you want to kind of, there's a couple other spots on the track where I give this the goal. The goal would be to keep the car on the right half of the track, but then be going so fast the car says, okay, I'm going to try that, but I'm going to have to step over a few feet before I do that. And you've got a little bit of room to bring it back over. So you also need to know as you crest a hill, as you're getting up to these higher speeds, that the car might get light. And I will say for me, right as I crest the hill and just as the car starts to settle, that's my brake zone coming into this corner. Now, do note there's a corner worker station kind of hiding behind a tree here, or hiding behind a word beside the tree, rather, and a tree. That tree is an important reference, actually. Notice the tree is now gone. As that tree goes out of your vision, maybe behind your A-pillar, you'll have to kind of index and figure out that could be a turn marker for when you turn and go through South Bend. The thing that makes South Bend really tricky is that you have to turn before you can see the curb. And I know that's a terrible reference. Turn before you see something, right? I mean, it's bizarre. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. One is use that tree. Another is use your depth perception to tell you when you're about halfway from here at the crest of the hill to the turn. Because it's about halfway is where you're going to turn, and you're going to brush the brake leading up to that halfway point. You're not going to scrub a ton of speed either. It's just a brush of the brake. Notice I've only scrubbed 10 miles an hour at this point. I'm going to get it down to about 85, 90-ish miles per hour when I go around this corner. I think the data hadn't quite caught up with the video yet, because this is, I think, a little bit fast for me. You're going to get to the curb, checking the corner worker. Before now, you'll be able to see them better than the camera can. Just trust me on that, please. And it's a very, very fast turn. And I'm going to say this is just before what I'm going to call a trust fall. It's very, very fast. Most novices who go through this corner go through it at about 60, 70-ish miles per hour. And they also have a tendency to think, oh, I cannot see anything. And they want to pull the car left. And we'll talk more about why that's wrong in a moment. It's very, very important that you stay straight. I would even say if you have to, find a tree out here that works for you and focus on that tree and drive to the tree for a moment. I've told students that, and believe it or not, it worked. I've told students, aim about halfway between these trees and aim there, and you turn out right where you need to be. Here's why. This is where you want to be. And most of the time, a novice or intermediate is going to be in the middle of the track when they come off the corner. It's survival. They see the world disappearing and they panic. And that panic actually gets you in trouble. So it's very, very important that as you come around South Bend, that last slide, that the wheel be straight and that it still be straight. Because what happens is when people keep the wheel to the left, they end up spinning to the left and hitting these trees. And it's way safer if you do have to make an off that you go out into, look at all this grass we can tear up. That's way better than letting trees tear our car up, or tires and guardrail before you get the trees. So there's a curb here, and there's also, when they did the repave in 2016, they added pavement after these curbs. I would say leave a little bit of room at first until you get comfortable with this, and then you can start going out here and using the curbs to drive well. Now, I will say the reason a lot of people spin out is because when you have a little bit of wheel in the car, when you have that little bit of left in the car, as it goes over this hill and gets light, it may not be important, but eventually the car is going to kind of settle again. And when you have that little bit of left-hand wheel in the car and it grabs, that little bit of a turn is going to make the car slow down, and that's going to load the front of the car up. It's going to make the back of the car light, and it's going to go around. And so many cars end up in these tires, and that's most likely what happens, honestly. A lot of the accidents at South Bend, in my opinion, can be avoided by keeping the wheel straight.